The Eagle and His Captor. A man once caught an eagle, and after clipping his wings turned him loose amongst the fowls in his hen-house, where the eagle moped in a corner, looking very dejected and forlorn. After a while his captor was glad enough to sell him to a neighbour, who took him home and let his wings grow again. As soon as he had recovered the use of them, the eagle flew out and caught a hare, which he brought home and presented to his benefactor. A wolf observed this and said to the eagle, "Don't waste your gifts on him. Go and give them to the man who first caught you. Make him your friend, and then perhaps he won't catch you and clip your wings a second time." The Blacksmith and His Dog. A blacksmith had a little dog, which used to sleep when his master was at work, but was very wide awake indeed when it was time for meals. One day his master pretended to be disgusted at this, and when he had thrown him a bone as usual, he said, "What on earth is the good of a lazy cur like you? When I am hammering away at my anvil, you just curl up and go to sleep. But no sooner do I stop for a mouthful of food than you wake up and wag your tail to be fed." The moral of this story is, those who will not work deserve to starve. The Stag at the Pool. A thirsty stag went down to a pool to drink. As he bent over the surface, he saw his own reflection in the water and was struck with admiration for his fine, spreading antlers. But at the same time he felt nothing but disgust for the weakness and slenderness of his legs. While he stood there looking at himself, he was seen and attacked by a lion. But in the chase which ensued, he soon drew away from his pursuer, and kept the lead as long as the ground over which he ran was open and free of trees. But coming presently to a wood, he was caught by his antlers in the branches, and fell a victim to the teeth and claws of his enemy. "Woe is me!" he cried with his last breath. "I despise my legs, which might have saved my life, but I gloried in my horns, and they have proved my ruin." And the moral of the story is, what is worth most is often valued least. The Dog and the Shadow. A dog was crossing a plank bridge over a stream with a piece of meat in his mouth, when he happened to see his own reflection in the water. He thought it was another dog with a piece of meat twice as big, so he let go his own and flew at the other dog to get the larger piece. But of course all that happened was that he got neither, for one was only a shadow and the other was carried away by the current. Mercury and the Tradesmen. When Jupiter was creating man, he told Mercury to make an infusion of lies, and to add a little of it to the other ingredients which went to the making of the tradesman. Mercury did so, and introduced an equal amount into each in turn, the tallow chandler, and the greengrocer, and the haberdasher, and all, till he came to the horse dealer, who was the last on the list, when, finding that he had a quantity of the infusion still left, he put it all into him. This is why all tradesmen lie, more or less, but none of them lie like a horse dealer. The Mice and the Weasels. There was a war between the Mice and the Weasels, in which the Mice always got the worst of it, numbers of them being killed and eaten by the Weasels. So they called a council of war, in which an old mouse got up and said, "It's no wonder we are always beaten, for we have no generals to plan our battles and direct our movements in the field." Acting on his advice, they chose the biggest mice to be their leaders, and these, in order to be distinguished from the rank and file, provided themselves with helmets bearing large plumes of straw. They then led out the mice to battle, confident of victory. But they were defeated as usual, and were soon scampering as fast as they could to their holes. All made their way to safety without any difficulty, except for the leaders, who were so hampered by the badges of their rank that they could not get into their holes, and fell easy victims to their pursuers. The moral of the story is, greatness carries its own penalties. The Peacock and Juno. The Peacock was greatly discontented because he had not a beautiful voice like the nightingale, and he went and complained to Juno about it. "The nightingale's song," said he, "is the envy of all the birds, but whenever I utter a sound I become a laughing-stock." The goddess tried to console him by saying, "You have not, it is true, the power of song, but then you far excel all the rest in beauty. Your neck flashes like the emerald, and your splendid tail is a marvel of gorgeous colour." But the Peacock was not appeased. "What is the use," said he, "of being beautiful with a voice like mine?" Then Juno replied, with a shade of sternness in her tones, "Fate has allotted to all their destined gifts. To yourself beauty, to the eagle's strength, to the nightingale's song, and so on to all the rest in their degree, but you alone are dissatisfied with your portion. Make then no more complaints, for if your present wish were granted, you would quickly find cause for fresh discontent." The Bear and the Fox. A bear was once bragging about his generous feelings and saying how refined he was compared with other animals. There is in fact a tradition that a bear will never touch a dead body. A fox who heard him talking in this strain smiled and said, "My friend, when you are hungry I only wish you would confine your attention to the dead and leave the living alone." The moral of the story being, a hypocrite deceives no one but himself. The Ass and the Old Peasant. An old peasant was sitting in a meadow watching his ass, which was grazing close by, when all of a sudden he caught sight of armed men stealthily approaching. He jumped up in a moment and begged the ass to fly with him as fast as he could, "or else," said he, "we shall both be captured by the enemy." But the ass just looked round lazily and said, "And if so, do you think they'll make me carry heavier loads than I have to now?" "No," said his master. "Oh, well then," said the ass, "I don't mind if they do take me, for I shan't be any worse off." The Ox and the Frog. Two little frogs were playing about at the edge of a pool when an ox came down to the water to drink, and by accident trod on one of them and crushed the life out of him. When an older frog missed him, she asked his brother where he was. "He is dead, mother," said the little frog. "An enormous big creature with 4 legs came to our pool this morning and trampled him down in the mud." "Enormous, was he? Was he as big as this?" said the older frog, puffing herself out to look as big as possible. "Oh, yes, much bigger," was the answer. The frog puffed herself out still more. "Was he as big as this?" said she. "Oh, yes, yes, mother, much bigger," said the little frog. And yet again she puffed and puffed herself out till she was almost as round as a ball. "As big as—" she began, but then she burst.